Fannies! Today we're talking all about Aurora Fantasy. From its real-life inspirations to coords you probably never even heard of, I found everything there is to know. There will be minor spoilers for the Aikatsu anime, so if that's okay with you, let's get started. Aurora Fantasy has been a terribly frustrating brand to research. The inspirations we're told about, ballet, fairy tales, and flowers, all sound correct. But every time I went looking for the references that Aikatsu said it used, I came back empty-handed. Instead, I found Aurora Fantasy's actual design inspiration in 3 unlikely places: ice skating costumes, classic Lolita fashion, and early 2010s boho. And don't you worry if that sounds completely incorrect, I will take you on the whole confusing journey. Let's get our starting leads in order first. In the anime, we're told that the design motifs include wildflowers, fairies, and ivy, as well as other natural elements from forests, and are also highly regarded as theatrical outfits. We're shown some beautiful artwork, which is a match for Cicely Mary Barker's Flower Fairy illustration series. But none of that artwork actually matches any Aurora Fantasy design, so that's our first strikeout. But aha, they also showed ballet and theater costumes as influences, so let's look for those. I found gorgeous costumes from the Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, and Giselle that all looked right. But again, if you look at the Aikatsu designs, they barely have any similarities. The Aikatsu series' 10th anniversary book expands the concept a bit to include Maria's Tyrolean Aries cord, saying the brand is inspired by Scandinavian folk costumes and ballet costumes. The ballet costumes are out, and the Scandinavian term is a bit too broad. But real cord designer Hashimoto Kayako clarifies in the animated Aikatsu movie edition, "We talked about, what about a Tyrolean style, which is reminiscent of sheep, and we incorporated Tyrolean style while keeping the flower and ivy motifs." I did find some Tyrolean folk costumes that vaguely resembled elements of Tyrolean Aries and flower prints, plus some Norwegian influences that could account for the very broad Scandinavian label. But that's only 2 designs accounted for, so we have to keep looking. The curveballs start coming from the Aikatsu card All Collection first season book. It describes the blooming cord as inspired by ballet dance and other elements, creating a medieval European atmosphere. Which is basically nonsense. There's no ballet or medieval Europe in that design. The fairy tale cord boots are said to have a floral motif that gives it a Nordic feel, which is also nonsense. There's nothing Nordic about a single flower. And the worst offender is the claim that the noble cord is inspired by the image of a noble. That's gotta be some kind of misunderstanding. I've never seen any aristocrat wear anything remotely like this. But in the handwritten notes next to the sketch for the blooming cord, we have a shamefully obvious inspiration. Flowers and fantasy gold, ice skating costumes galore. And that's it, that describes most of the brand. Now, I have to give Aurora Fantasy credit for being ahead of the trend here, because in the years after Aikatsu was released, the figure skating scene exploded with designs that perfectly fit Aurora Fantasy's concept. But even in the years before it released, when the brand was being developed, there are tons of figure skating costumes that match Aurora Fantasy's designs more closely than any other potential inspiration. And they explain another motif described in the Aikatsu series' 10th anniversary book. Soft pastel colors and gradations, a fantastical and dramatic new brand befitting the logo. And another description from the Aikatsu card All Collection first season book, filled with Aurora beautiful color gradation. The gradients, bright colors, scrolling patterns, sparkles, and theatrical exaggeration are all elements I found in figure skating costumes. Even the vague medieval theme and folk costumes have a place there. So that's a big chunk of Aurora Fantasy's catalog accounted for. To find the rest, I marched back to my J Fashion magazine archives and found exactly what was missing. First, the more obvious silhouette inspirations from Sweet Lolita fashion, cupcake skirts and soft pastels. Second, the romantic natural motifs of classic Lolita fashion. That's where we get the grandma-esque floral patterns and natural maiden vibe of the brand. Third, shockingly, is 2010's boho, for its mismatch of folksy peasant silhouettes, floral prints, ruffles, and belts so wide they could be mistaken for corsets, which is a style that bleeds quite naturally into general Japanese girly fashion. There are a lot of Lolita fashion adjacent casual pieces that match Aurora Fantasy pieces in color, pattern, and silhouette. Overall, I found that Aurora Fantasy's branding is stronger than its actual designs a lot of the time. I was constantly picking out beautiful references that felt on theme, only to look closer at the Aikatsu designs and see nothing that I thought I was looking for, which we'll get to explain in the next section. If you want to find fashion that looks like Aurora Fantasy dresses, look at figure skating costumes and magazines like Gothic and Lolita Bible, Cutie, Pop Teen, Sweet, Vivi, and Zipper. For fashion brands, look at Liz Lisa, Baby the Stars Shine Bright, and Innocent World as a starting point. But if you're more interested in the glamorous, fantastical image that Aurora Fantasy hides behind, then I'd head to Google's Arts and Culture archive to look up ballet and theatrical costumes. You will not be disappointed, there's tons of incredible inspiration there. For all of the misrepresentation in the brand descriptions we get, green grass stays pretty true to the intended inspirations. The name green grass is a pseudonym for the twin top designers Elena and Lisa Hiragi. The two of them are former picture book authors and illustrators. To me, that detail sounded like a massive hint for them to be some kind of real-life author reference, but I found nothing. Even the name green grass sounds like a pun, but I only found the Aurora or Bluesky digital library, and the anonymous Italian author Elena Ferrante. If you have another idea for a potential reference, please tell me. I've lost sleep looking for leads with no luck. The Aikatsu Card All Collection first season book explains that Green Grass was originally a famous picture book author, but they wanted real idols to wear the princess clothes that appear in their books, so they started the brand. And in the same book, we also get a direct quote from Green Grass. The concept is a cute dress like a princess. The blooming cord is a princess of blooming spring flowers, and the fairy tale cord is a fairy princess. We're always thinking about what kind of princess we want to be. That's all. Green Grass's anonymity is never explained. The most we hear is from Aoi, who says, "All of Green Grass's personal information is shrouded in mystery. Especially after Green Grass became Aurora Fantasy's top designer, that info became top secret. I've read that only a handful of people know anything at all." Still, Green Grass does seem to get along with other designers. They go to design conferences, plus Asuka's designer party. They're also confirmed to be close friends with Happy Rainbow's designer, Makoto, who they meet up with to discuss fashion over sweets. According to Makoto, the reason for their secrecy is that the twins are very shy. Although the two of them are accomplished authors running a professional fashion brand, they seem to have poor organization and social skills. According to Key, they are known to keep piling new ideas into their dresses until the very last second, which they also close themselves off from the world for. And even after Sakura says that she sent them letters as often as she could as a kid, the Green Grass twins imply that they felt too awkward to send her a single response. "We always wanted to meet you," they tell Sakura when she tracks them down in person. "We like drawing pictures, but we aren't the best at writing letters." They then tell Sakura that they made her a dress instead of writing back to her, which to me means that they either worked on this dress for several years out of guilt every time they failed to answer her fan letters, or they happened to have a dress on hand and gave it to her out of guilt when she finally found their studio. We do know that they make Maria's dress specifically for her though, and are receptive to Maria's Daisy suggestion for it. They don't seem to have a problem working past their deadline for the last minute edition, and they even take the time to shoot a video message to send with her friends, which is another questionable time management decision, but seems to be in character for them. Although it's not confirmed anywhere, I suspect that Green Grass were made to be twins mostly to relate better to Sakura, who is a twin herself. And both their character design and the design of their studio revealed a lot of those original inspirations we were talking about. Green Grass's studio is in a giant Victorian-style greenhouse, probably inspired by the Crystal Palace in Tokyo Disneyland, which was inspired by the Disney World version, which was inspired by the original London Crystal Palace and later inspired structures like the Palacio de Cristal in Madrid. We can go in two directions from here, so let's stick with Disney for a second, because the flower fairy concept is most mainstream in the Disney Fairies franchise, which was very active in the 2000s and early 2010s, and had a significant presence at the Tokyo Disney parks. The character design for Green Grass is very similar to a character from the Disney Fairies books named Rani. In the other direction, we have another probable inspiration for the greenhouse and flower fairy ideas. Fairy Florence is a Sanrio film from 1985 that features flower fairies in a greenhouse. Green Grass's studio is surrounded by a brick wall that looks a lot like an archway from Fairy Florence. It's also a pretty obvious ripoff of Disney's Fantasia fairy sequences, music and all. The boat scene in Fairy Florence also reminded me a lot of Green Grass's picture books. A series of Cecily Mary Barker pop-up books may have been influenced for those too. And if we expand out from there, we'll notice that Aurora Fantasy's pastoral fairy tale concept has its roots in the 1970s and 80s World Masterpiece Theater anime series. That series included anime adaptations of Western children's literature, including Moomin, Anne of Green Gables, Little Women, and most famously, Heidi, which was one of Hayao Miyazaki's earliest anime credits. The World Masterpiece Theater series was full of stories about young girls running around in an idealized version of the Alps mountain range of Europe, which is the region where Tyrolean culture comes from. Heidi's opening scene is practically a one-to-one match for Maria's mountain home. In Story of the Alps Mayonette, the protagonist sleds down hills and takes care of cows, and we get a Fantasia-style flower princess interpretation of Thumbelina in Andersen Monogatari. Going even further, one of the pioneers of the shoujo manga art style, Makoto Takahashi, often featured fairy tales and European folk costumes in his illustration work all the way back in the 1950s. In Japan, when you think of fantasy, you often think of Western fairy tales, rolling mountains, vast flower fields, shepherds and their animals, and princesses in ruffled ball gowns. So it's not random for Aurora Fantasy to have Tyrolean folk costumes tied in with fairy dresses and medieval peasant blouses. Those ideas were massively watered down for the actual dress designs, but the design work done for Greengrass and Maria stayed very close to the Japanese ideal of Western fantasy. As for Sakura, I think she represents the Japanese perspective on all these Western influences. She was raised in a traditional Japanese household, but not allowed to participate in the family's primary art form of kabuki theater, which is exclusive to men. So when her twin brother started his training without her, Sakura found escapism in the idealized stories of peaceful, natural landscapes and fantastical characters. I'm excited to dig into that more in her deep dive that I'm working on next. Aurora Fantasy's official brand description is, like an aurora that decorates the night sky, these dresses are wrapped in fine colors. Aurora Fantasy is a brand that would transform the wearer into a character straight out of a fairy tale where beautiful flowers bloom and lights sparkle, which I appreciate as a much more honest take on the vibes-based design philosophy of the coords we're talking about. The original brand lineup included 27 coords, plus 4 more added in Aikatsu on Parade. Fantastic Flower, Mellow Fantasy, Green Sprout, and Marchantic Flower. Its premium rares are Blooming, Tyrolean Aries, Mellow Fantasy, and Green Sprout. Despite being a fairy tale themed brand, Aurora Fantasy has no dream story coords and only one romance story coord, Flower Prince representing Thumbelina. It has no fever or boom coords. But the brand did get 20 more coords in the mobile game Aikatsu photo on stage, bringing its total count to 51. I have a video ranking those designs already if you'd like to see how they try to expand the concept beyond the anime dresses. One of the strangest things about Aurora Fantasy is that it's one of only 3 cute type brands in the original series, sandwiched between Angel Sugar and Dreamy Crown. For comparison, there are 4 cool type brands, 5 pop brands, and 7 sexy brands. I didn't find anything concrete about why there's so much variation, but if I had to guess, it's because cute is the designated protagonist type for the series. Angel Sugar is one of the largest brands in Aikatsu, with a lot of designs that would fit perfectly into Aurora Fantasy. The same is true for Dreamy Crown. And yet Aurora Fantasy doesn't even make it to the 3rd season, being mostly phased out by the time Dreamy Crown is introduced. And no new cute brand ever replaces it. Since future Aikatsu series don't seem to have this type distribution issue, I think it represents a logistical problem for the original series specifically. Because the original series cast and brands were all planned at the same time, so they would have been able to separate designs for Angel Sugar versus Aurora Fantasy at first. But when Aikatsu and Ichigo instantly became more popular than Bandai predicted, it could have triggered a priority shift for the designers. Designs meant for Aurora Fantasy may have been reassigned to Angel Sugar to help meet demand for new outfits under the Protagonist brand, leading to an increasingly blurry line between the two brand concepts. That's just my speculation though. I've never found anything confirming that coords swap brands behind the scenes. What's even more damning for Aurora Fantasy was the sudden Disney boom following the release of Frozen in Japan in 2014, the year that the Akari generation was in development. I talk about that shift more in my Dreamy Crown deep dive, but for this video it's just important to note that fairy tales as a concept became way more trendy in Japan in 2014, which is probably why Maria, the Western fairy tale princess character, was so popular when she was introduced. Suddenly, fairy tales were popular enough to potentially carry an entire season's worth of Aikatsu dress concepts. The romance and dream story gimmicks of Season 3 were meant to capitalize on that Disney boom. Every brand in the series would have at least one assigned fairy tale with a collection of fairy tale character dresses shared between brands. But there's one problem. Aikatsu already had a fairy tale themed brand, Aurora Fantasy. It was possible that this theming might confuse customers. For example, someone might think that buying an Aurora Fantasy dress would automatically unlock the romance or dream story mechanic in the Aikatsu arcade game. Because it's all fairy tales, right? In order to avoid that confusion, it makes sense that Aurora Fantasy was discontinued in the Ikari generation. There probably weren't any plans to bring it back or assign it to a new character. Despite this unfortunate turn of events, Aurora Fantasy's concepts survived in Angel A Sugar and Dreamy Crown, and they'd be recreated for Aikatsu stars as My Little Heart, Aikatsu Friends as Humming Leaf, and a handful of Aikatsu Planet Swing types. So just like with Swing Rock, we'll be talking about this style for a long time as we cover those series eventually. Tell me your thoughts about Aurora Fantasy, and make sure to check out my Aurora Fantasy rankings next. The Sakura deep dive will be released in the next few weeks. Bye bye!
It's a Yamato Nadeshiko Idol Fest!